But to this now, the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Dean Macpherson, has commissioned an investigation into the 700 million rand SAPS building, the Telkom Towers in Tshwane. The building was bought by the South African Police Services more than 8 years ago in 2016 for the purposes of using it as its head office. An additional 250 million rand has been spent to fix and renovate the building, but it remains uninhabitable and unoccupied. Public Works Ministry spokesperson James de Villiers joins us for more on this. James, good evening. Thank you so much for this. Really appreciate this. What information does the minister have on his desk at the moment pertaining to the purpose of the purchase of this building and the renovations and why it has not yet been occupied? Of course, there is a investigation that has been commissioned, but what information can we work with at the moment?
Yeah, as you are aware, the Telkom building headquarters complex in Tshwane has been vacant since it was bought 8 years ago in 2016 at a cost price of 659 million. And what the Minister of Public Works is really concerned about is that he doesn't believe that the value paid for the building is market value. Neither does he believe that the public sector or the public service got value for money with the 250 million rand spent on the refurbishment of that building. You have to bear in mind that the past 8 years that 250 million was spent, but we have not even removed the Telkom signatures from the building. And the SAPS headquarters that was supposed to move into one of these 4 buildings is yet to move in. So in his view, this is public money that was not well spent, and we therefore need to launch an investigation to understand exactly what went wrong and how can we avoid this from taking place in the future.
What is the plan? Is the plan to fix what is remaining of the building and actually use it for state purposes, or to just sell it?
Currently, the plan in place is to renovate one of the buildings. So it's a complex of 4 buildings, but one of the key buildings where the SAPS was supposed to be headquartered at is set to be renovated the next 6 to 8 months, with them moving in 8 months' time. But the Public Works and Infrastructure Minister really wants to understand if this money could have been better spent, and therefore is launching an independent investigation to really understand what went wrong with this building construction. But the current plan, as mentioned, is to renovate the building to make sure that the SAPS can move into one of these buildings within the next coming 8 months.
What happens to the other 3 buildings of this complex?
That's part of the larger scheme that needs to be undertaken by the Department of Public Works to understand what will happen to the remaining of the buildings. Currently, some of the parking is used by other departments, and there is a call by the current Minister of Public Works to move the headquarters of all public ministries towards publicly owned buildings in the city centre and stop paying expensive leases elsewhere. So part of the larger undertaking by the Public Works Minister is to try to understand how we can accommodate departmental and ministerial head offices in Tshwane, in the CBD going forward, to save taxpayer money and help contribute to the revitalisation of that central business district.
I hope you have the numbers for us. How many ministries and departmental functionaries are currently renting buildings and renting office space from private owners rather than making use of public-owned buildings?
I don't have the complete exact figures to you. I do know that there's currently a public call to try and understand exactly how many of the public sector buildings is accommodated in private buildings across the country. The minister has already denied the request of one of the larger ministries in South Africa to rent private building space at an exorbitant cost because of his demand that all public departments be headquartered in Tshwane. You have to understand that this is not a decision by the minister himself. This is actually a call by Cabinet already 4 years ago that all departmental headquarters should be based in the Tshwane CBD to contribute to the revitalisation of that central business district.
Yeah, the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure owns 880,000 buildings. The minister seems to be on a roadshow of trying to determine what the state of these buildings are and how many of them are used for the intended purposes. How far into that, let's call it an audit process, is the minister, and what more needs to be done in it?
The minister celebrated 4 weeks in office this past week. So he's
wow, he celebrated that.
Yeah, as well. He's welcome.
I'm being facetious.
No, that's all good. 4 weeks this past week, so he's obviously very new to the portfolio, trying to understand and come to grips with the extent of the portfolio. But as mentioned during his budget speech 2 weeks ago, there's about a 23 billion rand backlog and maintenance of public buildings across South Africa. And he believes that it's simply impossible using taxpayer money to renovate all those buildings. At the same time, we don't actually understand the true extent of public properties owned by the department. And therefore, one of the mandates given by the minister during his budget speech was to go and identify every single property that is owned by the department, including islands that is owned by the department, to understand what state they are in and whether we can partner with the private sector to renovate these buildings for public good. The minister understands that in a physically constrained environment where 700 million rand was cut from his budget in the recent budget speech, that he has to work innovatively with other role players, including the private sector, to start renovating these buildings to ensure that they contribute to the best of South Africa. Because currently there's too many buildings, including departmental-owned buildings, that are hijacked or abandoned, such as the one we've seen with the Telkom headquarters in the former Telkom headquarters in the Tshwane CBD.
Yeah, James de Villiers, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. We'll bring you more on that when we do get more information, particularly about how many departmental and ministry functionaries are renting buildings and office space from private owners.